Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know who I am Bobbit. I am the #1 architect, and today I am going to be talking about one buff and one nerf I would suggest giving to each killer in the game. Alright, so the first killer that we have here is Trapper. I think that Trapper's in a really good spot if you are against unexperienced teams. He can be really good. If you're against coordinated teams, he can be a little bit on the underwhelming side. But if I was to give him one buff, I would make him carry 3 trap space kit, and for his nerf, I would make it so that he sets traps a little bit slower, because he does set traps fairly quickly, and he does spawn 2 traps, but he can only carry 2 trap space kit. Alright, the next killer that we have up is Wraith. I think that Wraith is in a really good position. He is a really strong killer, and there's not really much counterplay to him other than just maybe spam vaulting a pallet so he can't break it in cloak. But if I was to give him a buff, I would give him a slightly longer lunge after leaving cloak, and for a nerf, I would decrease the duration of his speed boost that he gets when he uncloaks to around 1 second, because it does last around 2 seconds or so, and you still keep your speed boost when you're in hit cooldown after hitting a survivor. And I don't think it's intended, but that's mostly what makes him really strong. Alright, so now we're on to Huntress. Huntress can be a strong killer in the right hands, but she is a little bit on the buggier side with her hatchets and stuff. But if I were to give her one buff, I would make it so that she can cancel her hatchets, because the only time you can actually do that is if you let go of your M2 early before your hatchet starts charging. And if I was to give her a nerf, I would make her hatchet, her throw speed of the hatchet, a little bit slower to give a little bit more time to react to dodge and stuff. Alright, up next we have Nurse. Nurse is probably one of the strongest killers in the game, because she can blink through pallets and walls, basically denying the survivors any resources, allowing for easy downs. And if I were to give her a buff, I'd make her able to blink up and down, but she wouldn't be able to blink through the floor to escape the map and stuff. And if I were to give her a nerf, I would make it so that her blink is considered a special attack, so that way any perks or status effects that would affect M1s would not work. So if a survivor was exposed and she were to blink and hit them, it wouldn't insta down them. It would be considered a special attack. Alright, so now we're on to the Stalker. I think this killer can be strong in snowball potential, but as in general, it is probably one of the more weaker killers, because it is a basic M1 killer just able to insta down you. So for a buff, I'd make it so that he gets slightly quicker vault speed in tier 3, and for nerf, I'd make it so that it takes a little bit longer to stalk to tier up. Alright, so now we're on to Reaper. I think that Reaper is a very strong killer on small maps, because your M2 can cover the entire map essentially, and you can bound all 4 survivors relatively easily. Though survivors can enter locker to prevent you from getting any value of your power, which is mostly what coordinated teams will do. But for a buff, I'd make it so that the soulbound duration is a little bit longer, because I think base kit's around 20-25 seconds. And for nerf, I would make the survivors that get injured with the soulbound, I would make it only take away 1 health states. That way the exposed status effect wouldn't work, but it would still work for the survivor that gets M1'd. Alright, so now we're on to Psychopath. Psychopath is arguably probably one of the strongest killers, if not the strongest killer in this game. Able to down survivors within seconds due to the high speed and power. So if I was to give him a buff, I'd make it so that he gets maybe a 5 to 10% vault speed increase in power. But for a nerf, I'd make it so that he's forced to leave power if he gets stunned, along with the long stun. So now we're on to Architect. Architect is the best snowball killer in the entire game, as well as having probably the best mobility in the entire game. And for those of you who don't know, you can actually get into a locker when Architect is in power, and it just denies his power as a whole. He can't grab you out, he can't injure you, and it just basically forces him to cancel power and turns him into a basic M1 killer. So for a buff, I'd make it so that it takes 3 seconds to leave power, because normally it takes 4 seconds. That way the survivors make less distance, and also encourages other counterplays to his power. And for nerf, I'd make it so that he gains a little bit less power for injuring survivors, because he does gain around 10 to 15% per M1, and he can get his power relatively quickly. Lastly, we are on to Ninja. Ninja is probably one of the most annoying killers to face due to having arguably the one of the best anti-loot powers in the entire game, allowing him to just outplay any small pallet, making essentially majority of the pallets in the entire game unsafe. So for a buff, I'd make it so that he can charge his M2 fully a little bit quicker, but for a nerf, I'd make it so that he has a longer cooldown before he can use his M2 again after using it. Alright, so editor me here. I know I forgot about Hillbilly, but he is kill switched currently because of the amount of bugs he has. But when he comes back, I will include him in a video and talk about him. So for now, he's not going to be in this video.